I'm Kat.
I'm Rachel.
We are the Pandemonium.
Morning.
Good morning.
We I say this every time. We're recording these episodes rather early just to kind of make sure they get done. Currently, the husband and I are snowed in Texas. And it's been quite interesting. I don't even think. Do you want to look up and see if the liquor store's open today? I don't drink. He drinks, but
I mean, you shouldn't be drinking anyways.
no, I mean, yeah, obviously. But apparently he did look it up. I could have red wine if I chose to, but I'm not gonna. I've done so well. I don't think I'm gonna.
We're not risking your sobriety for it.
No. Although it'd be funny. Like funny, haha. Like, haha. We lost a listener on Spotify, and I'm pretty sure it's because they deleted their app. Because when they delete the app, when they delete their account, it deletes a follower. I understand. I get it. But I hear
We not know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So we had 112, and then we lost 4 followers, which it was a family of 4. They did message me and let me know that they were going over to Sirius. And I was like, okay, that's perfectly fine. But they're following us on YouTube. So
we didn't truly lose them. It just, we lost them on a streaming platform.
We transferred 4 to 1. So
right.
It's fine. I have more little knickknacks on my little shelf next to my computer of all my little. So Dylan gave me these before he moved. These little, stitches. So I have these cute little. I finally cleansed them and sanitized them because his ex-girlfriend, fiance thing, gave them to him, and I was like, "They're so cute." And he's like, "Here, Mom, you can have them." I was like, "Okay."
Cleansing in all sense of the words.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't think I'm going to choose sides with my kids, you're dead wrong. So I don't think there's anything new we need to discuss as of yet, aside from the fact that we just had our 2-year anniversary. I feel that's a pretty big accomplishment.
I think so. I mean, we've been around longer than 2 years, obviously. 2 years on Facebook. But we've also technically been doing episodes for little over 3 years. But first year doesn't really count because we had to wipe it all. Which sucks because there was a lot of stuff with it, but better starts.
I mean, it's okay because I learned my lesson, no background noise, so we don't get copyright strike.
Well, no background noise that we could be copyrighted about. Random noises like my dishwasher going. I can't do that.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things we can't really stop. The dishwasher, the trash collectors, the neighbor running his weed eater. None of those matter. It matters if we're listening to TV or the radio. We were going to have somebody make our intro, but life be lifing, and it's okay. If they end up coming back and saying, "Yeah, we'll make your intro for you," it's either way, but they had a lot going on. Have you? I know I've taken my meds. You've taken your meds. Our listeners, have you taken your meds? Because you should. Sorry. Hop into it. And also, have you set up your hydration stations? Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We have matching canisters. I have purple. She couldn't find pink. And then she has blue. But the pink they had was like a bubblegum pink, you said?
No, it was like it was like a reddy purple pink. Yeah, it was like really dark, not that that light purple pink was the closest I could get to pink. So I took what I got.
Well, lilac is fine. I'm not a purple person. But I use it for like a week. I clean it, I rinse it, and then at the end of the week I put it in the dishwasher. Which, speaking of which, my darling, water canister out of the car today. Thank you. Okay. He leaves that thing in there for a while.
I mean, it's been freezing, so I feel like it should have came in before now.
It's been a lot longer than you think, and it's disgusting, and I'm not even going to tell you because I don't want to.
I'm gonna fuss at him. That right there is why we can't have nice things.
No, I was asking him to make me 2 burritos. I can't say that. Somebody's hungry, and it's me! And the brisket. Because we're not giving you tenders. So, the case we're discussing today is my case. It's been covered on Snapped, Deadly Betrayal Behind Bars, along with a few others. Not to forget, this case has also been featured on podcasts such as Mountain Schmurders, Unseen, Anatomy of Schmurder, 10-Minute Schmurder, Court Junkie, The True Crime Click, Case Aghast, along with many others. Our Queen Bailey Syrian has not covered it. But if you haven't guessed it, this case requires a trigger warning for SA, CA, stabbing, schmurder, and grooming.
This is a Pandemonium Witches podcast trigger warning. The following episode contains graphic violence and gruesome depictions. Listener discretion is advised.
I hate that. All of it. Already.
So today we're going to be talking about Lisa and Kevin Knoefel. I'm fine. So her name was Lisa Marie McIntosh Knoefel, often shorted to Lisa M. Knoefel for news reports. She was born on May 20th, 1971, so that would make her a Cancer. At the age of her death, she was 41 years old, and she was born in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. So previous case that I'd done, based in Ohio, this is another one in Ohio. So I guess I'm doing a forkload of Ohios, which is fine. She was a lifelong Ohio resident who lived and worked primarily in the Cleveland or Lake County area. And before you ask what she was a good human. Like, a lot of people discuss. One second. He didn't know where they were, so I had to tell them where I hid them. Because I tend to hide things when I clean. So she was a social worker at the Cuyahoga County Division of Children and Family Services. She was working there for about 12 years at the time she was unalived. So she worked directly with children of CA and SA, including investigations involving very vulnerable children. So she was like a huge advocate for these kids and these people who were in these situations. Not only that, her work was described as emotionally demanding and high stress, as most situations with child services is. So, from her colleagues, at least from the news reports and some of the court reports as well, she was known as compassionate, driven, and deeply committed to protecting any and all children, not only professionally, but personally as well. So the problem with living as close as we do to Fort Hood, occasionally we get helicopters that fly really low. But it's
It's
fine.
like with me, with
The Blue Angels.
Tyndall. No, that's Pensacola. Tyndall. We just 22s, 35s, occasional 16s. They like to come here and train. So they just loud and annoying.
I was sitting here and I was about to hit the speak button. I went, oh no, if I can hear it through here, the listeners could definitely hear it. So friends and colleagues and family members consistently stated in statements that she loved children and always went the extra mile for all the families that she tried to take care of. But in the weeks right before she was unalived, coworkers noticed Lisa seemed a little distracted or preoccupied, which was really unusual for her because she always checked in with her coworkers. She started to distance herself and act a little off.
That's never good signs.
So, we are going to talk a little bit about her first marriage. She was married twice. She does have two daughters, Megan from her previous marriage and Haley with her husband, Kevin. Now, Lisa was previously married before her marriage with Kevin. The marriage gave her her first child, Megan, born in 1999. And the marriage ended in divorce in the early 2000s, which was cited around 2003, 2002. So Megan's father, there's some public records and media sources that identify him as Nicholas Nick Zanella. He's not a suspect and was not charged or implicated in Lisa's murder in any way. He remained largely out of the public eye, and there's very personal detail about him that has been released. Like, intentionally, they protected his privacy. There's also an absence of law enforcement involvement noted in the court records with Nicholas. Like, there was no big blow up or anything. They just parted ways amicably.
And sometimes that's just the best thing for each other and for the child.
I mean, correct. And sometimes, it's one of those things where if you have to do what's best for your child and you have to step away, you have to step away. And at least they know later on in life, they can reach out whenever you want to, which is the case with Nick. Lisa appeared to have been Megan's primary caregiver following the divorce. She lived full time with Lisa in Willoughby Hills at their home at the time of the murder. There's no public indication or any sort of inclination that there was any custody dispute at all. Nick was perfectly fine with it. He made me vibrate. He made me my burritos, and I have to wait because they're still hot, just like me and him. It's 5, 6. Anyways, so I I cannot do that with my new glasses on, with my computer glasses on. That gave me such a head rush. I'm so sorry. Okay. So there's no custody disputes, no family court conflict involving Nick prior to Lisa's unaliving. There's no evidence that has surfaced suggesting any hostility, abuse, or legal battles between her and her first husband, Nick. Importantly, there is not a thing from Lisa's first marriage that intersects with motive, planning, or some execution of her unaliving.
Okay. So at least we know that the child's not going to lose both parents.
There's a reason why I'm bringing this up.
It's the second husband, isn't it?
Yes and no. Megan did have a role in her unaliving. At the time, Megan was 13 years old when her mother was unalive. And Megan was the one who actually called 911. She was the one who called emergency services, reporting that her sister, Sabrina, was attacking their mother. Her call came as a key piece of immediate response to her timeline. Now, as you noticed, I said 2 daughters. So who's Sabrina?
Second husband's daughter? Adopted daughter? Ah. I was just going to start rattling off things until I guessed it.
So I talked about how her friends and family stated that she went the extra mile for all of her families. One of them was that she became a foster parent and would take in children who needed a place to stay. So in the aftermath of everything that happened, Megan, she already experienced her parents' divorce and then lost her mother in a super violent way, which I'm only going to go into little details, not a lot, because as we stated, here for the victims, villainize the villains. It was a fact that was often referenced by prosecutors to underscore the impact of the crime, is that Megan was like so traumatized by everything that happened. So before we get into the nitty gritty and everything, Nick was not abusive. The divorce was not contentious, and their prior marriage did not contribute anything to the crime. So she met Kevin. So Kevin and her met in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, several years apparently after her divorce from her first husband, Nick. At the time, she was working as a single mother, raising her daughter, Megan, and building her career in child welfare. The public reports don't clearly document the exact circumstances of how they met, workplace, mutual friends, friends, family, but there is no evidence that their meeting was connected to Lisa's foster care work or any criminal context. But it is important to note all of the media and court records that I found focus heavily on the events after the marriage. Early relationship details were not explored publicly. And I'm sorry, I'm going to stuff my face with just a little burrito.
And burn your mouth in the process.
Delicious. There is no shame with food here. We were shamed enough as children. We love food. We won't be shamed for it. So let's talk about Kevin. And I'm not talking about Home Alone Kevin. We love Macaulay Culkin. I love him and his wife. Well, they're not legally married, but they've been together long enough that legally they can be considered married.
And they have children as well, which are absolutely adorable.
So cute. So Kevin worked as a truck driver. You and I both know a good chunk of the people that we've covered in our research, the truck drivers are the ones you got to kind of keep a watchful eye on. But I mean, I know a couple of truck drivers who are actually kind of funny. They're kind of great. We have them follow us on Spotify. They're funny guys, but they're also psycho. Besides the point, we already know they're psycho. But his job required frequent travel and long hours away from home, which is typical truck drivers. Kevin had no publicly documented criminal history prior to Lisa's unaliving. He was not widely known in the community before the case, so nobody really knew him, but they knew of him. They primarily knew Lisa. Lisa and Kevin eventually got married in 2006, which is roughly around 3 to 6 years after her first divorce. That being said, Kevin became the stepfather to Megan, who was still a child at this time, and friends and neighbors initially viewed the family as ordinary or normal. They lived in Willoughby Hills, Ohio, in a suburban neighborhood, and the marriage appeared functional and uneventful, and there were no police calls, no TV reports, no known disputes prior to 2012. That being said, Lisa carried the bulk of the child rearing and the emotional labor alongside her demanding job. Kevin's job kept him so away from home so frequently that Lisa was noted as the primary caregiver and that Kevin was just there. So after years of working directly with abused and neglected children, Lisa and Kevin became licensed foster parents. And this decision aligned closely with Lisa's professional identity and her personal values. So, of course, they were approved through the foster care system and the court system, which does take a little while to do. There were no red flags or violations reported prior to their first child, Sabrina Zunick, being placed with them. I'm going to take a bite. And you look like you're going to say something.
I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
You know where that phrase is from, right?
I think so.
I made these, by the way. Rachel has some. Okay. During the Great Depression, people lived in very, very close quarters. So when people would go out for work and everything, the insulation was not even there. So there would be like 10 or 12 floors and 20 to 30 families living per floor. So when they would all get home, they would literally be waiting for the other shoe to drop on the floor before they could get calm and collected for the evening and go to rest.
Learn something new. Cool.
The more you know, shooting stuff. So Sabrina was born October 27th, 1994, near Cleveland, Ohio. Her biological parents struggled with alcohol and can't say that. Candy. We'll call it candy.
I was going to say,
Can't apparently say that either. She lived in an unstable environment and experienced early trauma, behavioral issues, and a mental health diagnosis, multiple of them, including ADHD, ODD, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, and according to her later statements, she was previously removed from her prior placements due to instability. And so she was placed with the Knoefels July of 2011. So she was 16 and at the time, Lisa appeared to view the placement as another opportunity to help a kid. She was very much optimistic and open to having this child come in and her being able to care for them. At first, Sabrina got along reasonably well with the family. She reportedly thrived and did well in school after the placement. But over time, there was tension between her and Lisa. Sabrina felt she treated her with unfairness, and compared to Lisa's biological children, she didn't like her at all.
And that's rough on a child, especially having jumped place to place. Like, that's pretty hard.
You okay?
Yes, I'm waiting for the timer for the Instapot to go off.
I love those little froggies.
Right? I do too. That's why I keep sending them.
So, of course, this is not how Lisa wanted Sabrina to feel. And I don't think she intentionally made Sabrina feel this way. I think it was just how Sabrina felt because the attention wasn't 100% on her and that she was dividing up her time with her other kids, which is common if you have more than one kid.
Right. Every sibling goes through with it.
So, that being said, at the time of her unaliving, there were no divorce filings or anything like that actively or publicly known. In the months prior to her unaliving, Lisa's coworkers noticed she seemed stressed, distracted, and preoccupied, a shift from her usual optimistic and caring demeanor. But the reason for this stress was never publicly noted by Lisa or anyone else. So, there is no public evidence that Lisa knew about Kevin's relationship that we're going to discuss in a minute with Sabrina or suspected a schmexviol relationship with her or that she was even planning to leave her marriage. The prosecutors later alleged that Kevin had groomed Sabrina and manipulated her emotionally and used her to carry out the unaliving. This particular narrative recast the marriage retroactively, and it's based on post-crime evidence and the testimony that was heard in the case. If you do want to hear it, I do have court documents. So, before November of 2012, there is no public showing Lisa, public record showing Lisa believed her marriage was unsafe or in any criminal way in nature. This shows that Lisa entered the marriage from a place of stability and independence, and she had already navigated divorce and single motherhood, and she had no problem doing that again. And she did not have any documented history of chaotic or dangerous relationships or knowingly having people in her life that were abusive to her in any way. This states that her life was ended due to instability and DB. And that danger was in her home and not anywhere else. So that being said, we're going to start with the morning of November 16th, 2012, early morning, Willoughby Hills. She is brutally unalived in her bed. And not just this part is going to be a little difficult. So if you want to skip forward, I'll put the time here where I am not describing in great detail anything that happens. So I am telling Rachel what happens. If you guys want to skip ahead, again, it is right above me where you want to skip.
Unfortunately, I have to listen to the horrors. I'm stuck.
Because they too persist, as do we, because the horrors, they're still here. Also, you're kidnapped. I'm kidnapping you on this journey. So she is pointed 170 times. More than 170 times. The knife was so forcibly used, the blade bent. Many of her wounds were defensive, and she was found unresponsive by first responders, of course, because it was more than 170 wounds. Now, if you think about this, defensive marks go on your arms and your legs. What kind of knife do you think she used?
Usually it's a kitchen knife of some sort. Most like most often used is the meat knives, as in like the butcher knife, like something really big triangle.
So I don't like the update for Riverside because they got rid of our little chat box. And of course, they got rid of Messenger for desktop. So I can't send it to Rachel on there. So give me a second. Where's Rachel? Now I gotta find it. Rachel. That is Sabrina. That was right after she had gotten arrested. And then
Only her hands are bandaged.
not Lisa, this is Sabrina. Remember, Lisa was pronounced unalived at the scene. This is the bedroom. Mind you, I'm not posting some of these on the video. I just lost my page of notes. We were doing so well. Where did it go? Okay. So Lisa was found unresponsive, right? As you remember from earlier in this episode, I said that her daughter Megan had called 911. I said this was very important to the story. She reported, "My sister is attacking my mom." There's a whole transcript that's in the actual court proceedings, which I do have the link to. It is in our links, which are going to be on our website. If you want to go take a look. Haley, who was 3 at the time of this brutal unaliving, was hiding in her mother's closet.
The poor child.
The reason I say this is important, she's probably still in therapy to this day. Now, I don't know if it's in her mother's closet or a different closet, but she says in the closet. So I'm assuming it's in the mother's closet. So at the scene, Sabrina, who's 17 at this time, it's been a year since she's been in their home, is found inside the home covered in her blood and holding the knife. So she's obviously taken into custody and she's arrested and charged as a juvenile, as a minor. But due to the extreme violence of the crime, prosecutors moved to try her as an adult. But Kevin isn't arrested. The public treated him as a grieving husband and he remained free as the investigation continued. So later in 2012, early 2013, mind you, this was right before Thanksgiving. So they carried this into the new year. Oh, I know. You're going to give me more side eye here in a second. Investigators continued working the case beyond the initial arrest, and they began examining phone records and text messages and statements from family members and Sabrina's evolving version of events because she started giving conflicted explanations for the murder. Over time, she began alleging that she had a sexual relationship with Kevin and had emotional manipulation and grooming, and that Kevin encouraged her and even directed her to unalive Lisa.
What the hell?
But wait,
There's always more.
I'm going to have myself muted when I eat. Sorry, guys. We do have one listener that does not like the sound of people chewing. So I know that much. I remember that from last season. I know that much. So in 2013, evidence and testimony developed, and prosecutors began to shift their focus to good old Kevin. So Kevin was then formally indicted on several multiple charges, including but not limited to aggravated murder, complicity, complicity, complicity.
Complacity.
Thank you. To aggravated murder, conspiracy to commit aggravated murder, and multiple counts of sexual battery, including a minor under his care. So they outline their theory, of course, as main prosecutors do, because they like to have their theories, as we do. Kevin groomed Sabrina as soon as she came into their care. He framed Lisa as an obstacle, and he used promises of love, fear, and financial motivation as he stood to benefit from a substantial life insurance policy and avoiding divorce. Do you want to know how much the life insurance payout was?
Probably a couple $100,000. Higher? Was it like closer to $1 million?
$750,000.
I mean, that's a chunk of change.
In today's money, it'd be well over $1 million because of inflation. So in the spring of 2014, mind you, that is all of 2013. They had to take that entire year to bring their case to get Kevin arrested. So, spring of 2014, Kevin's trial started. Mind you, Sabrina has not even been brought to trial yet. She is still in custody. So he was arrested and brought to Lake County, Ohio. And it was over the course of several weeks that prosecutors presented the case as calculated conspiracy. Excuse me. Sippy. Calculated conspiracy and not a spontaneous act. The defense argued, on the other hand, that the murder was an act of a disturbed teenager acting alone and on quote unquote fantasies.
Fantasies don't happen by themselves, y'all.
As they say in the Addams Family, it takes two to tango. You can't do one. It's called a foxtrot. Listen, I'm sorry. It was funny. I had to say it.
I know. I was just like, it takes two. Otherwise, it's not a tango.
So, of course, spring of 2014, Sabrina testified against Kevin.
Good for her.
We love that. We don't love what she did. However, she was groomed. I think she was still considered a victim in the situation. However, not really, because after I read all the facts, we'll get to that. Sabrina testified that she and Kevin were in a sexual relationship beginning in 2012 when she was still a minor at 17. However, Ohio, their state, I think is 18, like most states. I think the only states that are below the law is Utah. I think there's only 5 states that we talked about on last year's episode, I want to say.
General age of consent for Ohio is 16.
So even though she was a minor, she was still consenting, and it's not against law. I find that disgusting.
My timer went off. I also, because thanks to Google, can a 16-year-old date a 30-year-old in Ohio? The individuals age 60 and older can legally consent to sexual activity with someone older than them. Per section 2907.04 of the Ohio Revised Code.
I just finally started to be able to keep down food.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not. You're telling us and our listeners that Ohio's disgusting. Okay. Not our friend Ohio.
I'll be right back. You can keep talking.
I was having a dance break. Letting you take your time. I was doing a dance break, letting you take your time, since we got to give our listeners a little bit of a break, a bereavement.
Okay.
Also, I tend to sneeze like a grown man. It scares my unborn child. Worse than my husband sneaking up on me. It's funny though. Okay. So. Whoa. I just got a wall of text. Are you ready, kid?
Yee.
I said, are you ready, kids? And Josh went,
Aye, aye, Captain.
so the reason we had that little dance break is because of what's going to happen right about now. Rachel's going to be very, very mad at me. So,
Let's get this over with.
Kevin had told Sabrina that Lisa, his beloved wife, was worth, quote, more dead than alive because of the life insurance policies he took out on her. Not one, but multiple. He had talked about insurance money and the freedom he could get from it. He coached Sabrina on, quote, where to stab, how to twist the knife, and how to make sure Lisa would be unalived. He suggested on staging the crime scene as a burglary and claiming insanity if she was caught. She had claimed that Kevin, quote, didn't love Lisa anymore and wanted a life with Sabrina and wanted to marry her instead. Sabrina also said that Kevin threatened to unalive himself if Lisa wasn't unalived first.
Should have let him do it.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda, but didn't. So her testimony was the core of the prosecution's case and the most contested element. So prosecutors introduced text messages, phone records, testimony showing the inappropriate closeness between Kevin and Sabrina because there was documented photographic evidence of them being a little too close for father and daughter. They argued that Kevin abused his role as a foster parent and that the schmexual relationship created emotional dependence and that Sabrina was manipulated into committing the murder. So financial motive was finally introduced in the case, and evidence showed that Lisa had multiple life insurance policies. Doesn't say how many, but it said multiple. Prosecutors argued that Kevin would gain financially from her death as well as the divorce, which would have cost him money, custody, and his reputation, which you have to remember, he didn't have one. The community didn't know him. They knew Lisa. Lisa was the light of everybody. So prosecutors definitely didn't like Kevin. Neither did the community at this point. So they started to highlight Kevin's calm demeanor after her unaliving and the inconsistencies of his statements, considering the fact that he kept in contact with Sabrina after the unaliving.
Okay, so like the calm demeanor, okay, you're in shock. Okay, that could be plausible. It's everything else that then throws shade onto everything.
But wait,
There's always more.
there's always more because Billy May is here. So Kevin's defense argued in the spring of 2014, because this is during the entire year, that Sabrina had acted alone. It was a case of Lolita. If anybody has ever heard about that before, it's a case of self-defense that this child is obsessing over him and thinking that there's a relationship when there's not. That she was mentally unstable and absolutely obsessed with Kevin and jealous of his relationship with Lisa. Just think about that for a second. I can hear your sister right now screaming into her phone or into her Yeep, going, "What do you mean?"
That's not how any of this works. Plus,
That's not how this works. There is actual physical evidence that they had a schmexual relationship. Text messages, phone calls, photos, which of course I don't want access to because that is, see, Sam, I'm not, no. So there is no physical DNA evidence proving a schmexual relationship, and there are no physical recordings or direct proof of Kevin ordering the unaliving of his wife. So they portrayed Sabrina as a violent teen offender attempting to reduce her own sentence by blaming Kevin as the perpetrator and saying it's all his fault. Don't you remember that in the movie Lolita? So, of course, the verdict comes out June of 2014, and after deliberation, the jury finds Kevin guilty on multiple counts. Let's just say I'm happy about that because including complicity, I got it that time, to aggravated murder, schmexual battery, and the jury rejects the argument that Sabrina acted alone, that she acted with an accomplice. So, August of 2014 was Sabrina's hearing and sentencing, and she pleads guilty to the aggravated unaliving of Lisa. In exchange, she avoided the death penalty or life without parole. She agreed to testify against Kevin because of this. So her sentence was life in prison with the possibility of parole after approximately about 30 years, which I think after everything that she went through because I did go through the court records, with some of the stuff that he had said and done, she had every right to say what she did. What she did was still non-excusable, but what he did was monstrous. The judge notes her age at the time of the crime and the evidence of the manipulation and emphasized the extreme brutality of the unalive. So, late 2014, Kevin finally got sentenced. Would you like to know? Would you like to know his prize?
Well, by this point, the electric chair was no longer being used, so I guess he got a needle in the arm.
No, better.
A noose?
Better.
What could be better than a noose?
I'm glad you asked. He got life in prison without the parole eligibility after decades. By that point, he'll be in his 90s. Additional consecutive sentences for schmexual battery of a minor, classified as a tier 3 schmex offender, which you know where they get put. Anybody knows, especially that girl that we follow Jessica on Instagram and on TikTok. She was previously in jail. She was previously incarcerated. The one thing you don't mess with is children. That is the number one rule. You don't mess with children. He's screwed. So, of course, the judge remarked about the focus on his abuse of power and the betrayal of both his wife and the person who he fostered as a child. That, and he calculated and manipulated her, along with all the other grievances. So, from 2015 to now, here are the appeals and the aftermath. Okay, we're only an hour into this. I am just dumbfounded with how dumb this guy is. Kevin filed multiple appeals arguing ineffective counsel, unreliable testimony from Sabrina, but the courts denied his appeals. The jury was entitled to believe Sabrina's testimony, and there was sufficient corroborating circumstantial evidence. Say that 20 times fast. That being said, throughout the entire trial, Lisa was framed as a devoted mother, respected social worker, and a caregiver who trusted the people closest to her. And they brought to light the fact that she was attacked in her own bed. She had the inability to defend herself, and that betrayal was inherent in the crime. So, that being said, the trial revealed that there is grooming within a foster care system, which you and I both know we've seen in our research. That manipulation escalated into murder, and trust and caregiving were exploited. And at its core, the case framed Lisa not as the background, but as the center of the abuse and the person who was mainly being abused, and the center of harm, the victim of betrayal, and a woman whose compassion was used ultimately against her as a weapon. I'm going to close this up so you can think and say whatever you need to. Okay?
What I want to say, we get this episode banned, so I can't say things, or we're just going to bleep out a whole bunch of things.
I can try to bleep it out. I got to find a bleep button, but yeah, I can try to bleep it out.
All of a sudden, cue the technical difficulties as I'm rambling. Yeah.
So, defense argued that the case against Kevin rested heavily, if not solely, on Sabrina's testimony, with no actual physical DNA evidence conclusively showing a SA of or a schmexual relationship or conspiracy. Some claims also emerged post-trial, suggesting alternative narratives, including that Sabrina may have acted independently, but the courts upheld the conviction and denied the new trial motion. So, recapping. She was a devoted social worker, foster parent, unalived in her home in 2012. Sabrina, her foster daughter, stabbed her more than 180 times. Kevin, Lisa's husband, was convicted of orchestrating the whole thing and essaying Sabrina, who he was fostering. And both Kevin and Sabrina received life sentences with parole eligibility decades later. That being said, I did not like researching this case, but I felt it needed to be done, if that makes sense.
I understand. We're just ripping the Band-Aid off this season.
I don't like doing it, but neither do you.
This is true. This is very true.
Here's the thing. You know, when you look at pictures of people and you're like, yeah, I could see it. You know who he reminds me of?
Voldemort.
Scott Peterson.
I like my answer better.
Nope, look at the photo. He looks just like him.
Yeah, I can see that.
And
I
he
think it's
laughed,
something about the buzz cut though.
and he laughed in open court. He was laughing in open court about it.
Straight to the guillotine. That's what's better than the noose. The guillotine.
So this whole case, of course, got me going down a rabbit hole. And I ended up finding out that 60% of children in foster care have either been the victim of SA or seen someone being victimized. 60.
It's far too many.
I know. They've already had a hard enough life, and I know it's far too many. It's just like, how did we get here?
That I could tell you, but that would turn this into politics, and we're not going down that rabbit hole today. There's enough bad shit in the world right now, anyways.
Listen, we've discussed politics on the show once, and we're not going to do that. We're not going to be that type of podcast. But like, it upsets me very deeply. This is why I love my feral children. By the way, if you guys don't have a mom or an aunt, congratulations, you have those now. Stop sending stuff in the sister chat. My God. This case really, as far as foster kids go, it really kind of hit close to me, not because I'm adopted, but because my kids adopted me. And it's like, I keep thinking, like, if I was still in that toxic relationship I was 7 years ago, you remember that guy, would that be the situation I would be in, you know? Because he was that kind of guy. Not me over here having an existential crisis. No. On a happy note, I'm 22 weeks And by the time this airs, I will be more than half baked, because right now I'm currently half baked. Or the baby's half baked, rather. I'm trying to think of other good news. We could end this on a good note and not something incredibly devastating, because that's what this case was. For me, anyways.
I mean, there's snow outside.
There is. I finally got to walk on snow. It's crunchy and somewhat solid.
That's because there's ice underneath the dusting of snow.
Yes, I figured that out. But I mean, it was so cold. And I walked. I was like shuffling. But like, it's cold.
Oh, yeah.
I no longer want to move anywhere where there's any snow. I originally wanted to. I was very adamant moving to Washington or Oregon or back to like Maine or whatever. I lived in Maine for like 3 weeks and I loved it because I was like right near the ocean, right near the beach. But no more. No.
It's pretty to go visit and to play in, but not full time.
We've tried to leave the house and I get freaked out. The way the butthole clenches when he just in the car, it just glided. It was like no fishtailing, no nothing. He was in complete control, but I'm sitting there going, ugh.
Just slip sliding away.
But I know how to drive in flurries, because driving in snow is just like driving in mudslide season in California, which there are 7 layers of Dante's Inferno out there. I feel better now. Thank you for letting us.
You can cross that off your bucket list now.
Good Lord. Anyways, guys, stay feral.
Bite the hand.
We'll see you all next time. Okay, goodbye.
Okay, bye.
Well, party possums, that's today's dose of the pandemonium. Thanks for listening and watching the ADHD chaos. Review, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Tune in next week for more continued madness. And as always, stay feral.